Welcome back to Prime Photography. This time, I want to go a little bit deeper in the discussion about aperture and show how it could really impact your images and take it from so-so to a little more refined. Here we go. So like I was saying in the previous video, the aperture is really the opening in the lens that allows light to pass through. Lens such as this, I can actually adjust the aperture without it being attached to a camera. I can actually get to show you what that would look like if I were to adjust it, right? So let me see if I can get a close up here and show you what this looks like. So if you look closely there, you'll see the opening in the lens. Let me see if I can get to adjust the aperture. So if you're looking, you can see there's an opening there that closes when I turn. That is the aperture opening and closing, the opening that is going to allow light to pass through the lens and hit the camera sensor, or the film if you're using a film camera. Here it's really small, and here it's really wide. Now I have set these things up here, these perla beads, bead art, to help me to really illustrate what the aperture does and how it impacts the image. So I have this close character here, this Mega Man. I have him closest to the camera that I have set up. Right? He's set up closest to the camera. All the way back here, I have 0. 0 is set furthest away. In the middle, there's another Mega Man model. And just before you meet 0, all the way in the back here, there's Crash Bandicoot. There's Sagat about 1/3 of the way back. And then there are these other smaller characters from Mega Man as well. Now, with a lens that has a wide aperture, like the one I'm using right now, that aperture is 1.8. That's a really wide aperture. It's going to allow a lot of light to get in really fast. But in this case, I want to really show what kind of impact a wide aperture will have. That will have something called a very shallow depth of field. Depth of field is simply how much of the image is going to be in focus. So you can see how much is going to be in focus from Mega Man up in front here, all the way down to 0 down in the back here, with an aperture of 1.8. Let me take a picture like that and show you what it looks like. Now with that picture, having Mega Man up in front here in focus, as you look back in the rest of the image, you'll notice that slowly, each character as you go back, gets more and more blurry. This is one of the things that a wide aperture is often used for, especially when you're shooting in ambient light. It is used to isolate the subject. Make sure that the main subject, in this case Mega Man here, he is in focus. So your eyes isn't too distracted by what's going on in the background, but it's focused on him. And everything else, as you look, is gradually getting more and more out of focus. Blurrier and blurrier as it goes by. This is an effect often desired by pros because they want to make sure that when the person viewing the image is always focused on the subject at hand, the main focus of it, in this case, which is Mega Man. However, that is not the be-all and end-all. You can still have your subject well in focus, and they could be in the center of the image, in a whole crowd, just like this. Let me show you how that works. Okay, so now I've changed the focus of the image. Now, the main subject is going to be Crash. Shifting the focus away from Mega Man and putting it now on Crash. Check out how this image turns out. Now observing this image, you'll notice that all the characters before Crash is now out of focus, but Crash is in focus, and you can get a little bit of focus also falling on 0. Now with a aperture is wide as 1.8, it means that the depth of field, the amount of the image is going to be in focus, is going to be very, very narrow. And these polar beads are flat images. Yes, this is why I use these things to help articulate it. These polar beads are very narrow, and it's easy to move the focus from one to the next, creating that blurry effect even in the foreground of the image and the background as well. In this case, like I said, I focus on crash, and the reason why all of the others is going to be out of focus is because there's a very narrow depth of field against about that wide. And once you change your focus, everything starts to go out of focus except for where you have your main subject of the image. And in the second image is Crash Bandicoot. Now I'm going to shift it all the way back now to 0. Look at how this image turns out. Right, so now I have 0 in focus and everything else is blurry. And that's because I shifted the focus from everyone else to 0. And because I have that narrow depth of field, a very narrow depth of field, it's only here when 0, everything else is blurry. Still getting subject isolation, except for the background being blurry. In this case, the foreground is what is being blurry. Now, if you're like almost every human being on earth right now, you have taken pictures with your cell phone. And if you notice, the pictures with your cell phone, everything seems to be in focus. Although some have that feature that you can make the background out of focus. The reason for that is because the aperture in those cameras are really, really small. So that by having a very narrow aperture, a very small aperture, smaller it is, everything now is going to be in focus when you start to shrink the aperture. Less light is going to get in, so you might have to play with your ISO and maybe your shutter speed in order to get the ideal exposure. But let me show you what happens when I switch from aperture as wide as 1.8 to an aperture that is about, let's say f16. Right? Let me make that adjustment, show you what it's like. Okay, so the first thing that happened once I made that adjustment to f16 is that everything went dark. That is because now I have a much smaller opening in the aperture, so a lot less light is getting in. So I actually have to adjust my ISO and my shutter speed, which is always something you have to do once you're making the adjustment of your aperture. But now you can see everything is in focus there at f16, and that is because less light is getting through and there's a much smaller space. Once that light that's passing through there is focused to give you your image, everything comes into focus in the image, and that's a lot useful if you like to using it for landscape photography and such. So that is how you get everything in focus. I could even go higher than f16 to f22, get everything even sharper than it is. Let's try that. So there you see, with that image, everything now is in focus, right? Now, with subject separation being done in this way, you can actually use it for telling a little story sometimes, right? One of the things I like to do is, let's just say, I want to tell a story between 0 and Mega Man up here. Then what I would do is, I'll take away these, firstly. No, we'll leave this here. Okay. So these are all the characters from the game, of course. If you know, you know. If you don't, you're about to find out. And I can have it where Mega Man, and this is just all storytelling with it here. Mega Man is actually taking aim at the enemy who's about to run up and attack him. While Zero is in the background just waiting to render some assistance. Alright? But here how I'm going to tell this story. First thing first, I'm going to get back to my 1.8 aperture. And I don't need such a slow shutter speed. Give it back at 100, put my ISO back down to 200, which is my recommended. My recommended spot for my ISO to be in its native range. There's my son getting overhyped with his Roblox. Sorry. Alright, so I'll take this picture here. Right, so in this image here, like I say, Mega Man is about to engage the enemy here and Zero's in the background, just waiting to render some assistance to him should he need it, right? That's one way I could tell that story. In another way too, I could just switch the focus and put it all the way back here on Zero. Look how this is going to look. Right, so now it's still telling the same story. However, now that you're looking at this image, it makes you believe really that Zero is actually going to be the person who's going to be taking action now. You're focused on him and you can't wait to see what it is he's going to do next. And then we've got pretty focus here after we establish what's going to happen here. And although this is still a bit blurry with Mega Man and the enemy that he's going to face, now that you've shifted it down here, you can still have appreciation for what is going on and the story is still being told. Except, before the story was being told from Mega Man's point of view. With this image, now that you have Zero in focus, the story is being told now from Zero's point of view, or is being told such that the storyteller wants you to focus here and concentrate on what it is Zero is about to do next. Now, another way to use depth of field to your advantage, and I'm going back to that wide 1.8 aperture, I like to use it like this, where I can actually create that sense of discovery. Meaning, like, when you look at the image, you feel like you found something, you feel like you're looking through other objects that might be in the frame, and you're actually finding something else. So I've made Sagat the focus this time, but look at how far away he is. On the norm, I mean, your eyes will be catched by all these colors, all these different shapes and things in front here, and this might end up missing. But if I focus on Sagat with this narrow depth of field, look at how the image turns out. You have all of these different things taking place. You have all of these characters in front here, but amidst all of them, you were able to discover Sagat was in the mix, right? And that's because isolating your subject by way of depth of field with a wide aperture, you shift your focus away from everything that might actually be close by. Something that might actually be, closer to the person who's observing, but it's not in focus, so the person who's looking at the image does not focus on these things that are actually closest to them. But instead, because you have the depth of field set and you focus on the subject that you need them to pay attention to, it gives that sense of discovery, like you just found something, as I said, and in this case, it was Sagat. But there's another way too that I also really like to use it. And in this way, I just really try to put the viewer in the image, in the atmosphere, let them know that, listen, there's something taking place, and instead of you watching it and just feeling like, okay, I just look at that image of something, I want for that person to actually think that, you know what, I'm actually in it. I was actually a part of the scene by making sure that the focus is still on the subject, but still have things a little bit out of focus in the foreground. So it's a little bit of storytelling and discovery all at once. Let me make that happen for you. Okay, so now how I've set it up, I have Sagat and this little red character and Mega Man here in the foreground, plus another version of Mega Man there. Let me change Mega Man out here. Put 0 in it. I'm facing like so. And Mega Man is in the back here, about to engage that character. Take this picture and show you how that's going to look. Alright, so now if you observe closely, you can see that Mega Man is engaging this character in the back here, but there's something going on in the foreground. That makes you feel like you are actually in the action, like you are part of the image here in this about this area, and you are actually bearing witness to what's going on in the back here. So now, as I say, it has Sagat in the front, this small red character, and 0 up front here. And even though you have all of this taking place here, you can still focus on what's going on in the back here because I shift the focus here. However, you can tell that maybe Sagat and 0 are about to engage in a fight along with this little guy. And even though all of this is being taken place in front here, you still have where your focus is supposed to be, which is because it's the narrow depth of field is now all the way back here. You can still see and understand what's going on here as well as what is going on in the front here. That's how I like to use my depth of field as well. That shallow depth of field, my 1.8 aperture. Alright, so that's about it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and ring the bell. And leave a comment, let me know what else you want me to explore and I'll look into it. Right? Thank you very much. Peace.